thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. So Freeman Michael's here with Barnet Bain. A little different than we usually do it. We're actually picking this up as a separate segment. We ran out of time in the studio, had a little technical difficulties, so we are actually calling in today to pick up this segment. But this is the back end, the final segment of the show we did with Lisa Garr, which I loved.
Yeah, it was a great show. I also love, Freeman, how beautifully you showed your long division there. Because if it was up to me, this would be a 20-minute explanation to our listeners.
Well, I'm working on brevity. It's not like it's easy for me, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think you're the wizard at it. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's
so
great.
If you ever take up coaching brevity, then sign me up.
That's right. Well, you know, I'm working on being brevity. So let's track back to the conversation we had with Lisa. I'll tell you what struck me. What's that?
Briefly. Let's track back briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
In the interest of brevity, we're going to briefly track.
Yeah, that's the theme. What I think we were onto, the scent of, was, you know, this whole language around conscious parenting. You know, conscious being will take care of your conscious parenting. I don't think, to reference the conversation, that there are, you know, 3 tools or 9 keys. I mean, again, as you said in the conversation, Barnet, that there is a step in learning some tools which is required, but there becomes a point where if you're too tied to the tools, it actually defeats your purpose, right?
Precisely, absolutely.
So this idea of, if you really want to be a great parent, consider who you're being in the world, and that becomes the space wherein your kids have more and more permission to be who they are, which is ultimately what we want.
I think that's true. I mean, your kids, they not only look for how you're modeling behaviors, so the take my advice, I'm not using it paradigm of parenting is not terribly effective. They not only look for how you're showing up and how you're conducting yourself, but they also experience, without words, they experience the environments that we create, the state that we create, simply out of our being. And so one of the most profound wisdoms that I've received, most lately on our show with Shefali, Dr. Shefali Tabari, who advised us that maybe one of the most powerful expressions of being a parent that we could investigate is by working on ourselves.
100%.
The more you look at yourself, the more that I'm attuned to who I am and how I show up and what motivates me and what are my agendas and what are my unadmitted scripts and patterns and behaviors. The more that I take responsibility for myself, the better able the people in my environment, my kids, are able to see themselves, and we become different in that context.
Yeah, this is really around the understanding that we're projecting onto our kids, and an awareness, going back to the conversation with Lisa, an awareness that we're doing that is really step one, right? We're not denying that that's what we do, but our aspiration is not to be projecting who our children have to be. In fact, we're recovering from all those projections that were laid on us about who we were, you know, who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to feel and what works to keep the, you know, everyone happy around us.
If I had heard, or let me be even more precise, if I had had the presence of a consciousness to make a space for my child, my daughter, but very, very early, if I could have lived into the ownership that I myself am lovable and special, and that it is not what I do, but who I am that is lovable, if I really understood that about myself, I would better be able to create an environment in which she could understand that about herself. Can you imagine what you would be like, Freeman, if you had heard as a boy that I love you and I give you permission to be different from me, to have different beliefs, to have different attitudes, to have different gender preferences, to have different spiritual or religious preferences, different political preferences. I love you and I give you permission to be different from me.
So you have. I mean, this is the big thing with your daughter is that, look, one of the things I love, and this has come up because she's okay with it, is you've been open about the fact that she's adopted.
Yeah.
And you and Sandy both embraced her having a relationship with her birth mother, and now her birth father, and Sandy's even going to meet the birth father. I mean, one of the things that strikes me about Sophie, really strikes me, is that she's in her experience, I'm going to say fully. It doesn't, you know, we want to wrap our kids up in little packages, not because we're bad people. It's just we want to protect them. It's a kind of inclination we have, yeah? But without the awareness that is something that needs to be carefully balanced with an understanding that they have their own process and respecting the dignity of their process, you know, the bumpiness of their process.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people come into they come into the world with their own agendas.
Yes,
and they come in with their own energies, and they come in with their own potential. And to the extent that we, as parents, as community, can create environments that allow people to flourish in their own right and not abandon themselves or somehow relinquish their essential nature in order to conform to an outside expectation or to do so in order to belong, that's going to happen anyway. But to the degree that I think that we can mitigate it and meet people where they are, whether it's friends or children, I just want to be that person. I want to be somebody that allows another person to be to become the most of who they already are, and
that is
not
beautiful.
Surrender themselves to what I want them to be. And that's not always easy because, you know, when your kid goes a little too far out of your comfort zone, I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is triggering.
It is. But here's again what we go back to from the show. It's an aspiration. And for me, look, what you just said, Barnet, is here's what I'm aspiring to, and it's hard. That, to me, is far more generous than an expert on conscious parenting telling us the 7 keys or the 5 rules or the, you know, again, I don't want to diminish the people who are doing the parenting work. We have some wonderful friends who do beautiful work, and it's great. Yeah. But I'm just saying that this conversation, what we're doing right now, where there's an aspiration to support the essential, you know, process that these beings, our children, have come to experience, to manifest. And our job is just to create a big enough container so they can do it in the most loving and gracious way. And darn it, it's hard. That's a really generous thing. Whereas I get really personally kind of, I don't know what the word is, bothered. I don't know if that's exactly right, because it's fine. Again, you made the point that it's developmental, but I don't think parenting is 3 keys or 7 steps. I think it's a huge aspiration to be a conscious parent, to really allow your kids to be who they are, and it's not something you do because it's something you do constantly.
Yes, I think you're absolutely spot on. I completely agree. There's a secret sauce to it, in my view. In my own experience, I've discovered there's a secret sauce. I cannot love my child any more than I love myself.
Yeah.
So I cannot give my child any more permission to individuate and become her full being any more than I recognize the limitations to my own being.
And what strikes me And what strikes me about Sophie, and I said this to you when we were at coffee yesterday, I said it was so great to see your daughter on Sunday, because I saw her on Sunday and I had a brief conversation with her. What strikes me about her is how much she is in her experience as a human being. There's an authenticity in Sophie that is, for me, striking. I don't know many people who I've had contact with in my life who have that level of, and maybe it's my relationship with her, but that level of authenticity and almost transparency. Like what you see is what you get. She's so able to be where she's at in her life. It's remarkable. I mean, she's 6 or whatever years old she is, and she's just real.
Yeah. You're speaking to something that I experience constantly. I am blown away by her presence and by her authenticity. It's powerful. And sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes it triggers me. It triggers me because that level of transparency and authenticity, occasionally it will cause, it brings up things in other people that, she's so frank about her own experience that it brings up judgments from other people.
It does.
And I think, oh God, she's going to go through something. And there's my tendency to want to do agency and to take responsibility for another person's life and protect. And I still feel that impulse, and it's unhealthy. I need to be able to. I have to check my impulse. Not that I could do anything about it anyway. She's a 27-year-old woman. But, I want to say to her sometimes, you can be a little less candid. And I won't do it. But my inclination is to want to do it. It's uncomfortable to me because that level of transparency brings with it its own set of challenges.
It does. It does.
They are challenges that, in many ways, she is better equipped to handle. Well, she is better equipped to handle them than I can't handle her challenges. But I can't handle challenges in my own life that are the equivalent. She's incredibly powerful woman. There's another piece to this. You have young children, so you're a few years away from experiencing this. But as a parent of a 27-year-old woman, I could tell you that there was a moment when I realized, when I had the experience of her awareness and her presence superseding mine. And as I speak it, I'm choked up right now. There comes a moment when you realize this little person that you raised is so powerful that she is firing on more cylinders. I'm not saying that across the board, but there are so many areas in which she is firing on more cylinders than I am. There are so many areas, and more she begins to teach me. And I'm not saying that in a precious way. More and more, I have to redefine my relationship with her, where I realize, yes, I'm the father, but I am being led now in so many areas. And sometimes it's triggering because it pushes you into a humility that, frankly, I'm not always ready for. I'm not always ready to redefine the relationship. I'm not always so ready for it. But the easy one is she's so knowledgeable. She's the lead therapist at a quite a large treatment center for teens and adolescents, and now she's the lead therapist. I think they have for all three of their facilities. And she is so knowledgeable about the psychologies of these things and the various therapeutic models. She is so it's astonishing. It's astonishing. So at that level, it's amazing to be taught in that way. And that's in some ways easier to handle than the sophistication of pure consciousness, of pure depth awareness. That's not just the transference of knowledge, but I'm talking about wisdom. I'm making the distinction. When she shows up in that authenticity that you're speaking about, that's something that I am now learning from. I don't want to go on and on about this, but it's a big point.
Well, you can't because we've run out of time.
Oh, are we finished?
Yeah, but here's the good news. Here's the good news. We'll be back again. Hey, listen, for those of you listening,
next time. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah, for those of you listening, we want to invite you to keep tuning in and keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.